Hello, welcome to another podcast for Linh Talks Tech. So today, I myself, Linh Nguyen, and my panelist guest is CTO David Stavisski. Today's topic revolve around the BTP Integration Suite, the monitoring gap that no one talks about. A lot of customers have asked when they deploy the solution on BTP for Integration Suite, the complexity of just digging around the flows and the logs and any of the KPIs or metrics. So it's becoming one of the biggest operational risks in the SAP ecosystem because the integration suite can talk to many different integration scenario and have a lot of thousands, if not millions of messages that flow between different applications. So more specifically, the integration suite itself is once you start to get up and running beyond the marketing, the integration suite is kind of positioned as the backbone for modern SAP architecture. So let's talk about that today and BTP as a whole, and then the integration suite, some of the pain points around that, and operational kind of monitoring management, and look at some of the opportunities, how we can bridge some of those gaps. So today's episode is going to talk about that specifically. So hey, David.
Hey.
We're back. So David and I, obviously a long time SAP kind of nerds. If you think about what we spend time looking at in terms of monitoring and automation and operational management of SAP ecosystem. So we're no stranger to dealing with the whole messaging integration apps, starting with XI and PO and PI and all of that CPI stuff. So now we have this generation of BTP, which is web-based integration. So David, remember your background in working on the whole messaging network monitoring for business kind of documents, iDocs and things like that, right?
Yeah. It's still going on the SAP side at least, but yeah.
Yes. So many customers still are on the old PO. Some have started the journey to migrate over to BTP Integration Suite. So I think from that, our experience working with cross-system orchestration is to go beyond a single system, right? So backend could be anything, could be ECC or S4, and then the integration layer of what we're talking about, integration suite. But then the endpoints might be anything, could be a rebar, could be SuccessFactors, could be any other third-party things that SAP supports today. So what is the big problem that we are looking at today? Big question, right? Are you really monitoring the integration suite? Well, I think we are familiar with some of the customers and partners today who are actually operating the integration suite. It can be daunting because talk about many different BTP accounts and sub accounts and many different apps that are spun up flows to get around that. Today is they're looking at dashboards, but they're not really, I guess they're not really doing anything proactive, right? I think we see that, when flows fail, they have to go dig in to get to the problem.
Yeah, if you look at BTP itself, I mean, integration suite specifically, there's no monitoring built in at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see stuff, but yeah, you can, if you configure notifications, yeah, you can get notifications. But otherwise, it's not really monitoring built in. It's not like SAP with CCMS or whatever, or even PO, Java and stuff like this. No, not at the level. So you have to use some tool. It could be Cloud LLM or IT-Conductor.
Yeah. Obviously promised that BTP integration suite will solve, lots of integration challenges. But what they didn't really say anything about is this cloud native architecture is, SAP's marketing pitch is, we got you covered, everything's monitored in the cloud, right? But then when you operationally try to work with it, then you have several tools. So you got the kind of BTP cockpit, looking at the account level, global accounts, sub accounts, all these instances of stuff. And then you have the integration suite dashboard, the typical kind of app. You go in and, you see whatever your iFlow configs and your central logs, whatever. And then recently also Cloud AOM, right? We all know about Cloud AOM and SAP's kind of new venture to provide SaaS version of, application lifecycle monitoring and yada, yada, yada. So already you mentioned it's like three things already talking about all that. And then now with API first integration, It all sounds great. That's kind of what it is, right? On paper, SAP's got it all covered. Not so when we actually talked to several BTP and IS customers already and partners as well that manages multiple customers. And, the reality really, it's kind of fragmented, right? Looking around.
Yeah, I call it disjointed.
There was one of our managed service provider, right? They kind of show us the dashboard console in the BTP, and it's like, holy cow! You scroll 5 screens to even get to the right sub account and the right integration scenario. And looking at it, they're not even getting the alerts when there's a problem. They have to figure out which logs do I want to figure out, and how does my integration suite let me know if an iFlow is bad unless I go looking for it or somebody complains first, right? So it's kind of the reality is you got different UIs, you got all kinds of new metrics with the flows. And then
even Cloud LLM, if you look at it, it's completely different for every app it monitors. So Integration Suite is just like another app.
Yeah.
Right. In Cloud LLM.
Yeah.
So
well, I find myself with Cloud AM also, you have to monitor Cloud AM, right? Because it doesn't work by itself. It needs the jobs that run on premise to push, if you're integrating with your S4. I mean, it might be okay just if you're monitoring maybe the traditional, or not traditional, but a new SAP BTP app. So everything in cloud, but rarely any customer do that, right? They have, the whole point is talking about integration, is that it needs to talk to a backend system, S4, whether it's, in RISE or in hyperscaler or on-prem or something. So cloud connectors and all that stuff as well.
Yeah, the whole ecosystem, yeah.
So I think there's a lot. We're not saying that it doesn't do it, but it's just everywhere. It's kind of disjointed, right? So that's really brings us to this first problem I want to talk about is this. There is no single pane of glass. If you're looking for it within the SAP ecosystem, they're trying to paint Cloud AM as the fact, but really at the end of the day, you still have to go dig into Integration Suite and BTP. So where's the issue? We don't know, right? It's more like, where do I need to start looking? So starting and ending with a root cause could be a very different thing. So that's one of the pain points expressed by customers and partners so far, as to where do I even start if I troubleshoot this? How do I train people to manage these things? Because remember, iFlows and things like that are created by integration guys, right? Analysts and developers. They're not the technical operations people. But then when it's handed over for them to manage or operate, they got to support when something's not working. It could be resource, could be connections, could be even as certificates, could be like expired, could, anything could be a problem, right? We don't know. But that's where the problem is, I think. Where do we start looking at? But we know, right, SAP, the number of customer that we talked to already, like either they are on a path to upgrade or implement, or they already have some iFlows configured, part of their business process. It's becoming part of the critical landscape. But instead of talking about a product, it's more of, I would say, the flow, right? So everything is a message, could be an invoice, could be an order, could be
it's a toolkit, if you will.
Yeah.
You build your own stuff.
Yeah, so that's basically, it's like a development kit, right? It's a development kit, and build your own iFlow. Here's a bunch of templates. We support thousands of blah, blah, blah. And then you're on your own to create that business scenario. If a customer logs into this and replaces whatever they were using before, whether it's, Boomi, web methods, or, the integration becomes a critical end-to-end scenario. A failed message, a failed integration is actually a failed business process. It causes an outage. Right? So that's why I think from a criticality standpoint, it is fairly critical, because, for instance, if you didn't get an order, the order got into the system, but then you didn't have send acknowledgement, or you didn't pass it along to something else to start the whole order fulfillment process, all that stuff is part of the business critical thing.
Yeah, those supply chains are very long nowadays. It's super critical, really. Nobody works alone, right?
Yeah. And we look at one dashboard that BTP and Integration Suite had. I could have thousands of messages. Let's say you have 5 iFlows. Each iFlow take care of something. But in each iFlow, it could handle thousands of messages a day, depending on the size of your business and the integration volume you have. But so what I do see is today it's still very UI driven. People have to dig around, and the monitoring is very manual, right? So it's still kind of reactive troubleshooting. Hey, I didn't get this order. This document didn't flow through. And so even though we know that messages can fail and nothing will happen, nobody knows anything until somebody complains, it degrades the business essentially. So it doesn't matter if they're on the fastest and greatest platform, communication is fast and everything, but if the message fails, then the business process is kind of broken, right? So I think this is where we would traditionally call it APM, application performance management, becomes important in terms of not only monitoring, but triggering the right processes, whether letting the right people know and pinpointing the root cause. So that's still very, very, very manual, I'd say right now, what I do see coming.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed is it's very disjointed. So Cloud LAM gives you some monitoring for messages, but why messages fail? So there is a root cause and there is a foundational kind of problems. Maybe certificate has expired.
Yeah.
So everything has to work together, and you need to understand what causes what, and that's not done so far.
Yeah, and that's really bring to that pain point, right? Because it's fragmented. The visibility, you only see certain people only see certain things, right? The systems are siloed. So maybe Basis is still traditionally monitoring, back end ABAP systems, S4 or whatever. And then when something happens, I need to get my BTP guy, and then I need to look at the partner that that particular iFlow is talking to. And this whole end-to-end business is really not solved. It's a really big problem. So we're not really saying that there's not tools. There's plenty of native tools within the application, but how does that help you with the whole root cause? What the problem is when it does happen? Is fragmentation. The back end is not connected to the front end in terms of root cause analysis, even though it's connected for communication, right? So if an iFlow break, where do you start? Where do you start? Do you log on to BTP first? Do you log on to the back end? There's a log something. Is there a log in back end that says communication fail? All of that stuff. I think all of that is not clear. I don't think I've seen a runbook that says this is where you go and press two buttons and you get the root cause for an integration scenario failure. So that's, to me, it's a kind of a problem right there, is fragmentation in the visibility of this issue. And then systems, we know, right? It's kind of treated in silos. Even talking about things like SLT before, there'll be a different team looking at SLT, and the basis guy will be looking at, the back end, and then there'll be somebody else looking at the third party interface on the destination side. So I think that's a problem, is it's slow. If there's a disruption, it's slow incident response to get the mean time to repair. So that's really what we're talking about, is this I'd say kind of a blind spot.
Yeah, a fog of war.
Yeah, just drop the bombs and forget about the rest. We don't know what happened. Everything's at the carpet level, right? So that, to me, doesn't scale when we're talking about lots of iFlows, lots of messages in each iFlow. I don't think thousands is unrealistic. I think that's very common to what we see in large customers, whether it's order processing, whether it's part numbers, whether it's just confirmations or anything like that. And then if you take that and multiply by, for a managed service provider, if you say multiple tenants, how do you track all that? You have to log on. It's like the old days where everybody has their own solution manager, and they have to log on to each solution manager to figure out the problem. So by that time, you're like, oh, I don't even have credential to get on to the customer solution manager. So this whole thing, failures will fall into the cracks, right? It becomes time consuming. And to get to even the bottom of one single message failure, let alone what if 10 fail at the same time? The thing I think about, remember, if it fails, right, you normally see more than one, right? If something breaks, like, I don't know, resources, or one endpoint is down, or a certificate is expired, those failures are going to come fast. So if you're just looking at logs for one guy before you can even do anything to correlate, many others will fail. So nobody's there to watch it all the time. That's the problem. If the UI is slow in terms of digging in around BTP and then logging on to SAP GUI in the back end, remember, if you have to troubleshoot right now, people have to actually VPN or get onto the back end as well, right? So I'd say that that's actually a strain is the level of people effort involved to troubleshoot it. So I think that's one thing. And we're not even talking about managing the actual messages. We're talking about just monitoring at this stage. I'm going to keep moving on because there's, as I talked about the blind spots before, one of the things, David, you have experience with is dealing with like failing APIs that like endpoints are down or maybe certificate expired and, maybe connections drop. So we get this from customers all the time, right? Oh, my network couldn't handle the workload and then something time out or messages start failing because I don't have enough resources.
And all this is preventable, right? So
Yeah.
if you do proactively, you
Yeah.
monitor the infrastructure, the network, the certificates. That doesn't have to happen. You can know in advance.
Yeah, and certificates an interesting one, right? We had inquiries recently about how to handle like not just BTP certificates or integration suite or across the board. There are so many certificates now to handle across an ecosystem. If you think about just three systems, backends for and then the middleware, it could be BTP integration suite or it could be something else. And then there's an endpoint somewhere else, like, Ariba or something like that. Just to keep tab of that whole three different system and different certificates they have, because it's not all certificates are the same, right? You got different types of certificates for different purposes.
Yeah, and they'll all expire at different times.
Yeah, yeah. Don't we wish they were all like exactly the same time, the same period of the term expiration and the same renewal process? Not even that.
Oh, yeah, I mean, different systems don't allow for the same certificate authority, so you have to get them from different sources.
Mm-hmm.
Some are baked into SAP, for example. Some are you buying and then you getting them from outside. So it's a mess.
So connection to where there's two type of thing we talk about. One is like just one is down, and the other two is just degradation. Like it may be working, but it may be slow, and it might time out occasionally, but it succeeds the other time. So the tricky one is if it still works, but it breaks occasionally. Maybe there's some volume that causes the message to take longer, and then there's timeouts that just cause it to time out. I mean, these are some things that the hardest thing is when things are kind of working but not working. At the time that's not working, you don't know because it looks like it's working, but it's not. So we see this, right? Even simple connection requests between applications, it can succeed 99% of the time, and 1% maybe the queue's full, whatever, some resource bottleneck, and then you have a hard time figuring it out. So if you don't have some kind of trend or correlation analysis, it can be a problem. Endpoint connectivity, especially now, some stuff go a public network and some stuff goes to the back end with the secure WAN connection, express route or whatever equivalent. And then some stuff goes through Cloud Connector, for instance. If there's a call that initiates back into the backend system, they might go through Cloud Connector. But at least integration suite, over public API today, right? And so
some basic, yeah.
But SAP being that we're talking about always on connectivity, there's some kind of SLA for that. Everybody talk about the reliability of network nodes and things like that, but nobody's holding anyone accountable for an end-to-end scenario because they always say, hey, no, you own that part, you own that part. So who's going to be responsible for the end-to-end connectivity and success of the integration? The problem there is that if you don't have visibility end-to-end, how can you even enforce SLA? Everybody's going to be pointing fingers. But yeah, I think that's also an issue there. Again, it's a security issue as well, right? Because everybody controls the issue. One more pain point, I think actually two more, but one here about is just the yellow, red, green issue that in BTP, if you drag up an iFlow and there's an error, it's red or green or whatever, that's in the source system, right? But how do you see that if you were, like, let's say on the S4 system, you don't see it, right? It never came. So the problem there is, I'd say, there's very shallow, this status level. It's not true root cause where you can see the whole path, right? If you got a route and the route goes through multiple interchange and things like that, you need to see the whole end to end. Can't see just one segment. So I think that the failure, it could happen in any of the leg. And I think that's a pain point because everybody who talk about monitoring and putting in something, they're only taking care of that one segment. They're not looking at beyond their responsible segment.
Yeah, and another interesting point is that in enterprise, we used to separate the system when you're not relying on them to be connected, right? So you're monitoring them from different sides. For example, file watchers, right? The old style integration. The data comes in, maybe not. You're not in control of the party, the third party. So what do? You actually need a kind of sophisticated monitoring of the data arriving or not arriving. And it can arrive different time frames and stuff like this. So all of that is actually very pertinent to integration suite, right?
Yeah, that's a good point, because just because you didn't get it doesn't mean there was no problem, right? So I don't have any problem, but the problem is you didn't get it, right?
Yeah, you cannot trigger jobs or something because the data hasn't arrived.
Right.
And might be arrived a little bit late.
Late, yeah, which can cause
But it
other
might be
problems.
critical, right? And how do we define late? That's not straightforward. It's not something easy to do because it can arrive within, let's say, half an hour or 2 hours within. Your whole processing depends on it. If it's too late, I mean, you miss the window and the whole hell breaks loose. If it arrives too early, maybe that's not the accurate data because you need it by a certain time.
Yeah, yeah.
Snapshot. So all of that stuff is not touched at all by integration suites.
Yeah, yeah. The whole scheduling and time-based monitor is actually very advanced. Now, most customers don't do it because they don't have capability to do it. They just assume things will arrive in the right order at the right time, and then there's no negative monitoring, meaning like there's no like if nothing comes, they just assume everything's okay. But actually, that's not the case, right? Nothing came is actually a problem if you expect it by a certain time. So that's a good point. So I want to talk about this last one, pain point. So BTP is great that everybody turns things on until somebody gets the bill in BTP consumption, all the sub accounts and all the different instances you stir up, and then whatever they consume in number of iFlows, number of messages. So today, I think there's still early for adopter. They haven't really thought about the cost side of things, but we know anything like consumption based, like a utility, just like cloud in the early days, people spin up stuff and then just forgot about it. And then they get the bill and they're like, what is this workload doing? Why is it consuming, a lot of storage and resources? So everything counts in BTP. They count everything measurement wise. So there could be a big surprise cost in terms of running integration suite that perhaps they pay for a certain amount of messages, iFlows, and then they hit it or they consume it. And later on they get a true up on the bill on that. So I think this is a big area. It's kind of a FinOps area. And so if there's no clear correlation between the load that you're running, the volume, the consumption of resource on BTP, and then what does that look like on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly period? Because definitely you don't want like a huge bill at the end of the year that, oh, you're underpaid so many millions of whatever messages and you get hit. I think that you can buy those integration packs licenses up front too. But yeah, I think the FinOps aspect is also very interesting there as well. So let's talk about like where is the opportunity or where is the opportunity to fill the gap if it is. So today we know there's monitoring, like everybody talks, they have monitors, they have integration suite monitor, BTP, all kinds of stuff, status alerts. But the true application performance management goes beyond that. And we look at the availability, we look at performance KPIs, we look at traceability in logs and trend analysis. Again, all of that has to combine to provide true management. So it's not like I just turn on an application developer is like great at configuring iFlows and then turn it on, but they never think about like what is needed to fully operate or manage this thing. When do I know that messages are too slow? Let's say, for instance, I expect 1,000 orders an hour, and suddenly I'm only getting 20, but I'm not monitoring that from a trending perspective. That could be a problem, right? Your business process might have got hit some kind of bottleneck somewhere. So the guys who look at it from pure processing standpoint, the SAP system might say, hey, oh, great, everything's working great. But if you're looking at the volume of expected flows and you're not getting it, then that's also indication something's wrong. So I think there's talk about like more than just what meets the eye. If the dashboard's all green, does it mean it's okay? Because if you're monitoring, that looks okay. But if you're doing true performance management and business process monitoring, it could be a big issue there. We've seen our customers run business process monitoring, right? It's to check the number of volumes of these different transactions that they expect every single day. And that is also a good area to talk about in terms of going beyond the monitoring aspects of things. So what I think you really need, let's talk about this. Why is this important to get into these opportunities? Like the first of all is there's an overall health in a unified monitoring scenario that you talk about availability, heartbeat. Remember, David, I think one of the areas we work on a lot is heartbeat of an application, right? What does that mean? You could define many things. Is the application giving me logs? Is it constantly probing? Okay. Is it healthy? Is it retrieving messages? Is it retrieving logs? All of these are kind of a health monitoring of an application, right? Not what the application is running, meaning like all the workload stuff, but that's just on system health monitoring level for that particular application, heartbeat, right? So then we get into messages. So first it's like the high level health monitor, and then you get into the message level. Can you dig into a message, see what kind of payload, who's reinitiating it, timestamps, correlation of errors or status level monitoring per message.
Yeah,
And
it
then
also feeds into statistical observability and stuff like this. So you look at what partner is hitting the most and where potential problems are. So it's all related
yeah.
if you
So
cross-reference it.
and then the flow, SAP calls it iFlow, but I mean, integration flow could mean more than just integration suite. Right? It could touch multiple middleware. SAP might handle one section, and then there may be another third party that is handling something else, like a replication or something else. So that's that whole kind of what you really do need is that end-to-end APM intelligent to look at the whole flow, not SAP iFlow only.
Yeah, it's layered. It's really a layered cake. So projects onto third parties and on-prem applications, everything. So you need to multi-layer approach to really be proactive and have visibility into all the problems.
Plus, you're talking about like also connections. Just because the machine is up doesn't mean the application or the ports or whatever service is supposed to be listening on the other end is actually working, right? We've seen this where we have to probe. You got to be able to probe these applications, not independent of messaging flowing, to make sure the connection is good. It's responding, because it may be up. Even the service might be running, but when you probe it, it's not responding, or maybe the account has expired or whatever, right? So that's how that connection monitoring level, I think, is important as well to make sure that there's no disruption in the whole integration flow. So, and then I wanted to look at deep logs. I think today, this is one of the bigger issue is for every application, or we call it an object, an IT-Conductor, but every object can have its own logs of what it's doing or what it, different level of logging can produce different type of traces. And where do you get all that into one place to provide root cause analysis and auditability? Because if once you've solved the problem, customers today rarely go back and have ability to get in that log and provide a contextual root cause analysis in one place. And that's really, you could have logs in all different application systems. But once you have a problem, you want to be able to get that log and store it, maybe in a central root cause analysis for the problem across multiple systems. And that has to live as long as the audit trail is required for auditors. So I could think about in the past where, like a Walmart or something, they put in an order and one of their vendors missed like 5 orders, but doesn't sound like a lot. But let's say the order is like $5 million each of some, quantity. That's a lot. And so when that happens, the company want to like not just solve the problem, but then provide to auditors why did you miss $10 million of order? They eventually got delayed and maybe you got a penalty as well from it. So all of that actually compliance level SLA is important to have ability to do auditing for what happened as well. So that can be say, I have put in the necessary prevention for that to happen again. But in general, that's deep logging. We talk about a little bit about resource usage before too. And so who knows? When people configure integration, they always think about, is the integration working? But they never think about, can it handle the workload? a million messages is different than like 1,000 messages. Could be server, could be network, could be, storage. If you're storing before it sends it, or you're storing logs for everything, that can be heavy usage of storage, right? Data volumes and things like that. So can all of this is be put together in one place is kind of what we're interested in, like what you really do need, right? So can all of this stuff, if you bring all this information together in separate dashboards and separate applications, can it be easily correlated? Not really, as we know. So can you actually take this metric and align it up with another metric from a different application to provide you one end-to-end view to help you correlate and provide root cause, or just stay on top of your health management? So that I see is kind of a big missing piece, because we know all these tools, they don't talk to each other, right, in terms of being able to provide easy correlation, central point of control. All right, now we can talk about, now we know that there's problems there, there's issues. What I think several months now, I think, when did we start working on integrations? Maybe about, talk about it about a year ago, but spending all this time, David, you have kind of worked on the engineering side of this. We're not trying to recreate Cloud ARM or Integration Suite. We're not replacing the SAP tools, but we want to fill in those gaps we talked about. So you want to talk about some of the design decisions we took in terms of filling in some of these operational gaps?
Yeah, I mean, we play in the same game. We build IT-Conductor over the years, has capabilities. It's SaaS, right? So for us, it's very transparent what type of application we really integrate with and how we manage it. It can be on-prem, it can be SaaS. So all of that naturally flows into our SaaS
Mm-hmm.
namespace. And for the customers, for end users, it actually adds, it's completely transparent, right? So you have your gateway, it collects the data, or we collect it from the cloud itself. End users don't need to be concerned about how they do it or the means to get there. And that's compares to like Cloud LAM with very heavy configuration and Cloud Connector, all that stuff. We've been kind of tasked and focused on making it as frictionless as possible, and that's our kind of purpose, to make it frictionless.
Yeah, and I think also that business aware, right? Because the business is the one that tells our technical counterparts what they want, and that translates to, we kind of call it business aware monitoring, right? You have to be aware of what business does this particular scenario solve, and how do we make sure that the customers are always on alert based on how this business operation or business process works. So it's kind of always talking about the business aware aspects, ITC. We understand the kind of revenue impact to disruptions or critical situations, right? Business transaction level. So it's one thing to monitor like technical resources and things like that. End of the day, I think most of our, at least management level customer always talk about is like uptime, availability, performance, mean time to repair, and kind of prevention. And how do I prevent issues? And doing that in a kind of a way where it's always 24/7 on, auto attendance, auto scheduling, automated, somewhat like recovery actions. Right? So not only failures, but like, can you recover from that failure? If so, can you do it on our behalf, right? I think those are important areas. At least we talked about health, availability, and processing of, business transactions, flows, and then providing logs where is needed for troubleshooting, and then obviously providing ability to plan for capacity, because resources change all the time. So without understanding what they actually use, how much memory do I have? Is it network bandwidth? Do I have enough storage? Even something like a file system. If a file system is not monitored, and I remember for interfaces with SAP, it's always like dumping stuff into your SFTP interface file systems, being get picked up by the application. That can actually get filled up, and then everything stops. But if you're only monitoring at the message level and not the resource level, you wouldn't know. There's no correlation to like why did the interface file system failed, because it ran out of space. So that's kind of the important thing too. But also, this is one of the things we talked about with no SAP customers is 100% in SAP. That's gotta be a true statement, right? They have many things because it's an enterprise tool. We're talking about like the core SAP customer, not the ones where maybe business one or something that just run a Concur or whatever. But all customers have a very complex scenario where they have multiple endpoints, services that run on multiple places, on-prem and cloud, and they need connectivity between all these. So I think, one example where the customer that has stuff on-prem, has stuff on AWS, and now has stuff on BTP. And then all these three has to work together. So how do they keep track of everything, all the endpoints, all the connectivity, and then also making sure all the applications are healthy, as well as all the keys and all of the access, all of the SSL stuff. So I think SAP comes from the fact that they do the monitoring of the application, but what they don't do is the entire ecosystem. They will ask developers to get involved to build like a BTP app to monitor some, cloud AOM gaps or whatever, right? So I think that's an existence for third party who can integrate and see the whole ecosystem and bring your own scenario, and it's, configured to work in that. Um, so that's one thing I say beyond SAP native tools, right? And we see that no customer, even for tools, no customer has one tool. They have multiple tools, but why do they need something that acts as a control center? It's because there is a lack of integration between all of these. All right.
There is also cost maintaining all these
Yeah.
disparate monitoring solutions, and
The
not
licensing
just
cost,
not
the human cost.
human cost mostly.
Yeah. 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 And teams come and go, right? And then human is like a revolving door. So you have the knowledge to first implement it, configure it, and maintain it, upgrade it, and then care and feeding, and all of that. So yes, there is so even though something like Cloud AOM or BTP say, hey, it's out of the box, it's got these things, but the costs of having somebody dedicated to look at the logs and monitor and manage all that, there's definitely involved. It's not trivial. So I think that's kind of why I say that you don't need more dashboard. You need a control tower, right? And that's what IT-Conductor is built to do: is orchestrate across disparate systems, different application level, infrastructure layer, databases, operating systems, integration layers, and the control tower. The whole word control means you have control. You're not just monitoring. If you want to take action, you want to be able to manage schedules, the ability to send reports, the ability to trigger workflows in response to some scenario is kind of important. That's the control side of aspects. So without the ability to visualize or get metrics across the landscape, I'd say it's pretty hard to control. In fact,
Also consider the role of AI.
uh-huh,
So when you have a control tower and AI works there, which does an IT-Conductor, that's much simpler task for it. Don't need to integrate all these MCP servers. Otherwise, you're going to be configuring, spreading your credentials all over the place.
That's an exciting area. Actually, I think around the fact that AI for us in the agentic world today for operation is it really helps to pull together like the correlation, to generate potential root causes, even diagnose trends, right? And then look at its available tools that is created so that the agent can either invoke another agent to do the work or engage the right tool to either answer the question of what happened, and then the next step of answering what can be done to remedy the situation, right? So this whole thing can only live inside kind of a control tower with kind of an AI operations focus, which is exciting. I think that topic we'll definitely dive into more in terms of how AI can help. But like a simple use case we talked about before there is like AI can go and hunt down expiring certificates, right? It can definitely say, hey, your certificates for your BTP, your certificate for IS, or certificate for your S4 backend is about to expire in a month. Go address this issue before your integration scenario breaks. And then
we do straight monitoring for that too, but yeah, that's additional.
Yeah. So the tooling can definitely take care of that and say maybe even implement if there is a sufficient integration is to even renew the certificate or create all the work and then the human in the loop can just sign, authorize it to be signed by the certificate authority or something like that. And there's a lot of possibility here in terms of being able to control tower, more intelligent layer orchestration. This slide is nothing new. We already talked about how certain things are complex, but there was an episode I did recently with the Cloud AOM or Solution Manager type focus panel. We said, hey, 5 years from now, is SAP going to be simpler? No, everybody unanimously agree, and they all had like more than 20, 25 years experience. And nobody answered that it would be more simpler in 5 years. It's going to be more increasingly complex, more places for things to hide, more cockroaches. But the hybrid landscape and the cloud native apps are going to increase the level of complexity for integration for sure and manageability. You have logins and send, SSL, SSO, and single sign, all of that stuff. Is everything working? So one scenario breaks, there could be 5, 10 before problem areas you could look into. But in the scenario we talk about more complexity, it could be like double, triple the complexity. Like where do you go search for potential issues when there's a scenario that break? And it's almost impossible to come up with a like run book to figure out the troubleshooting because it could be so many permutations of what happened. So that's where the combination, I think, for the architecture to take on the new challenge of using intelligent monitoring and also correlation and the AI agentic view of always looking out for problems and looking for possible solutions and then invoking the right workflow and then orchestrating that so that whether it's human or whether it's machine, it can be actually orchestrated across, like example, creating a ticket and automatically doing the analytics or analysis of what happened and then recommending the tool. And maybe the human that got involved can just trigger that process as the next workflow to remedy the situation, right? So it's a lot of things here that SAP complexity requires to effectively manage it. And I think, as we say, complexity is going up. So you got to up your game on the control tower side. So if you're using all tools, I'd say all basis monitoring stuff is not going to work anymore. Just checking each component at one time in different system, logging on, takes too long. Even if you can figure it out, right? I mean, on an average, I think a major critical incident disruption, I think is like 3 hours to remedy, to find and then remedy. So the 3 hours is critical to the business. You got to get it down to like minutes, not hours. So I don't think the old model is sufficient anymore to wait for operation team to pick up an alert and go figure out where do I log in to troubleshoot and all that stuff. But everything has to be kind of almost ready for them to have 1 or 2, 3 clicks to get to the root cause and open a ticket and ask management for approval to implement something to fix it. That is the key there, right? The old model is broke. So I think correlation automation has to come together. And as we say, David, IT-Conductor is the conductor, right? Our maestro is really our agent is called maestro, right, David? And I think its job is to be able to manage other agents too.
Yeah, maestro is the name of the bot, right?
Yeah,
it has many agents.
Agents. As many tools as we can create, that can be agents.
Yeah, I mean, agent is really a certain role it can play with certain tools and do certain things. So, and yeah, we've been making a lot of progress. Actually, makes life easier for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of fun too to see these tools get used in the context of automation because the tools always had existed. It's whether you tie that into an automation scenario, right? But single tool is not automation, but an orchestration of set of tools in response to some problem and some deterministic actions is more of an agentic workflow to solve issue. So what is the new model we want to talk about? I think this is going to require some more deeper dive, but I think in our vision, you do need more modern APM to drive the model operations of complexity that all these application vendors and integration scenario brings. More correlation, more proactive DF detection, And as I said, agentic AI. That's kind of the future of SAP Ops as we see it. I think we talked about this episode last year. We did at the end of the year the prediction for 2026. I think was early this year. So this is kind of our operating model for effectively managing a complex, growing complexity of SAP ecosystem in the light of BTP and integration suite. The whole word integration suite means you can integrate, right? you you run integration suite and work only in one app. So that means the more adoption happens there, the more scenarios that will essentially multiply exponentially in its ecosystem complexity. Okay, I finally got through to our key takeaway slide. So for those of you, I guess, working with BTP and integration suite, these are kind of questions like, can I trace the transaction end to end, and then, not only BTP but all the way through to the back end and to the destination source and everything else in between? Can I detect failures early? Maybe the whole workflow won't fail or the iFlow if you detect the issue on the source and you already kind of address that before it trickles as a whole end-to-end workflow failure. Right? We've seen this before. Things like job failures. If a job triggers to produce something or a traditional message on the source on IDOC creation, whatever it is, if that's the beginning of the chain or some part of the chain that can automatically recover because you detected you need issues some recovery, that can detect and then fix that before the whole workflow or iFlow becomes a bigger issue, right, and propagate. And then when issues happen, can I correlate that? Can I bring up a single dashboard or a screen that has 5, 6 automatically issues that were happening in this multiple systems that I can look at and say, hey, look at that. When this thing failed, that trickled that, then you already know what the source root cause of the iceberg is, not the top, I think, right? So I think that means unless you have some tool to do this and you're going to take more time, talk to multiple teams, you really don't have an APM solution. I think you just have a bunch of dashboard. Anything to add to that, David?
No, it's right on point.
Okay, so final thought. I think the modern landscape, SAP, we can all say, unless you are still running very old traditional stack and architecture, I think it is trying to modernize with different apps. So it does demand a higher level operational intelligence, not just, monitoring basically operation team or basis team anymore. It involves across different teams, operations, applications, integrations, all that. If you have a biggest, challenge today working with integration suite, we'd like to hear from you because again, we've heard this from other customers who express pain points in managing this day to day or basically reactive mode. You have some scenario, let us dive deeper. So I'm sure along the way, future episodes will get into more deep what IT-Conductor does inside of our BTP monitoring integration suite. And this is only the beginning discussion in this topic. So I really wanted to thank all the folks who are here, integration leaders and architects and basis and operations folks who brought to our attention some of these issues, pain point. And if you work in this area, definitely let us know your thoughts on the topic we talked about today. David, any closing points here?
No, I just want to mention that with BTP, Integration Suite is just the beginning. So SAP is trying to move into BTP as a delivery platform for applications and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have plans to
Mm-hmm.
spread our monitoring all over the place where we can be useful. It's a similar technology from our perspective, so it makes it relatively easy for us to go laterally and add additional. And the more stuff you put into the control tower,
Mm-hmm.
the better visibility. So I think the future is more consolidation.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more data you have in the one place that you
Mm-hmm.
can universally access and understand, and especially with agentic AI,
Mm-hmm.
that becomes much more important. Just because integrating it directly to all these tools is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's and that brings economies of scale and everything. We're not talking true observability here because it's more than that.
Mm-hmm.
Observability good, but the control is another story. So that's my
Okay.
2 cents.
Well, I agree, and let's dig in deeper. But I think BTP is like the Apple App Store in the early days. It proliferate, then you got thousands and thousands, and then I think there are more apps that will come on, and you need to better manage it from operation, from finance standpoint, and just from accountability and compliance as well. Security is important as well. So all of that is important. I think we'll definitely be talking about BTP a lot more in the future as well. Well, thank you everybody, and until the next episode. All right, take care.
Thank you.